Welcome to this edition of Africa 360, the current affairs show that unpacks African news, where we go beyond the headlines to bring you what you won't see anywhere else. If it's about Africa, we're not just talking about it, but we're bringing it to you. I'm Chris Maroleng, and this is Africa 360. Coming up in this edition, it's been almost 3 months since she was handed the top job at the African Union. And now the real work begins as Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma officially assumes her new position as the African Union Commission Chairperson this month. We talked to her about how she plans to deal with some of the challenges she's inheriting. All this and more coming up right here on Africa 360. Well, after being elected chairperson of the African Union Commission in July, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma's term as the head of the continental institution officially begins this month. Although her election has been described by some as significant in the history of the body, others are of the view that the 63-year-old South African has been set up for failure, with the deep-rooted problems being simply handed over to her.
Criticized for responding slowly to crisis and of a lack of will to resolve the continent's issues. The African Union's been accused of that and more under Jean Ping. But many believe it's all about to change, that Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma will shake things up. Others, though, say she's been set up to fail. One such is former South African President Thabo Mbeki. He was quoted in a local newspaper. "I think part of this feeling that she is going to change things is the failure to understand how the AU operates. When it doesn't happen, they will blame her." Mbeki says Dlamini-Zuma doesn't have the capacity to change policies, that the AU relies on individual nations for that, and that the Commission's only there to try and encourage, not enforce. Dlamini-Zuma has a series of other challenges ahead of her too. Firstly, she needs to help heal the divisions created during the AU Commission election campaigns. Then tackle issues surrounding the AU's effectiveness. Current crises on the continent will also be top priority. Those include northern Mali and the eastern DRC. And with these issues deepening, Africans will be looking to the AU for leadership. If it doesn't provide it, Dlamini-Zuma is likely to see a term of criticism against her.
Well, to help me discuss some of the challenges that Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma will be facing and whether indeed she'll be able to rise above them, I'm now joined from our Pretoria studios by a regular contributor to our program, Kofi Kaku, who is, of course, a senior lecturer at WITS. Kofi, thank you so much for joining us on Africa 360 once again. Day one, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma walks into the office. What do you think should be the first thing on her agenda?
First thing on her agenda is to help to manage to lower the expectation and perception that she's a superwoman. Although she needs to appear to be a superwoman, she's got to give the impression that the standards won't be as easy, but she can meet them. That's the first thing to get out on their communication strategy.
But Kofi, here's the thing. One of the key difficulties about assuming the chairpersonship of the African Union Commission is that this is really the secretariat, the civil service of the African Union. The policy will still be established and set up by the heads of state. Now, that's a huge gap. And how is she going to deal with that? Because it looks like she's going in with these huge perceptions around what she can do. But on the other hand, we all know that the heads of state are the ones who are calling the shots still.
Yes, indeed. There is this kind of what I call a dissonance between those who hold the powers in the back, which mean the head of state and government, head of governments, are holding the power in the back, and she's sort of the front person. Now, that perception of the dissonance has some truth to it, but you have to remember the face has to show that she can deliver. And I think she's got the tools to do that. And the tools are exactly the programs she has to carry out. If she does carry those programs out, setting out, for example, a potential force for the African Union to make sure that we deal with the continuous crisis that are plaguing the continent day in and day out, having some kind of crisis management strategy that works better, not just to prevent crisis, but turn crisis into opportunity for the continent, and then looking at the role of the diaspora outside the continent and making sure all these day-to-day activities and the program of the African Unions, at least her chairpersonship, is taken into account, and she realizes that. I think she'll be more powerful than the people in the background, and she'll be able to give a new image to the continent.
Kofi, here's the thing, though. When we look at the challenges facing the African Union as a whole, one of the key things that we need to address, and I think that she needs to address, is the fact that there appears to be no shared and common values around many issues, apart from African solidarity. And this probably leads to some of the differences that we see. Is there anything that she can do to help resolve this?
Yes, she will. As much as we look at this whole continent as a fragmented and differentiated country or nation by nation, it's part of a whole regional place. It's a continent. And there are threads that really bring all these fragmented continents together. One of them is the key idea that's at the heart of the African Union itself. It's the idea of an integrated African continent, and that she will pursue it with vigor, and then she'll be challenged to do it because it's going to take years and years to be able to see the real fruit of that integration. But if she keeps on doing that, she keeps on focusing on the integration, making sure her communication strategy, day-to-day communication, this is another big challenge. The union that hasn't had a very good communication strategy doesn't communicate well, but if she comes in with a team, a sense of urgency in communicating, in clarifying, creating transparency and openness, she'll make sure that things will get done and people come together very quickly. And as you know, one success after another one, will bring people around very, very quickly.
Well, that was Kofi Kaku talking to us from our Pretoria studios. As you can hear from Kofi, there are still a lot of challenges that face the new AU chair. The big question is, how is she going to deal with these challenges? And more importantly, will she be able to bring the continent together given these perceived regional divisions? Well, I recently caught up with the new chair, that is Dr. Dlamini-Zuma, and I asked her about these issues, and this is how our conversation went. Madam Minister, thank you so much for joining us on Africa 360. Well, I should stop calling you Madam Minister and say African Union Commission Chair, and congratulations on your appointment. But it's a very daunting task ahead of you. Do you feel you're ready to step up to the plate?
Yes, it's a very challenging responsibility, but for every challenge there are opportunities. So that's how I look at it. And yes, I'll be ready on the 15th of October. That's my first day at work.
Indeed. So on that first day of work, what is the first order of business? What can we anticipate the new African Union Commission Chair to get up to?
Well, as usual, my first response when I get to a new job is to listen, to hear what's going on. So probably the first week I'll just spend listening. Maybe the first 2 weeks, I don't know, depending on how much there is to hear. Because I think you can't just walk in and then start changing what you don't know. You first have to know what's there, how is it working, what are the issues, and then you can be able to say, now I'm ready to act.
Indeed. But one of the key things that we believe you were elected for into this position was because you were seen as a reformer. As a result, I must ask you, can we anticipate a great degree of reform of the African Union Commission during your tenure?
Depends what I'll find there. If there is a need for reform, yes. But I think I think there are two major responsibilities. One is just to strengthen the organization itself so that it can have a stronger voice. The second one is because there are policies that are very clear that the heads of state have taken, whether you look at agriculture, you look at infrastructure, whatever you look at, there are policies. Now it's just to see how much support we can get for those policies to implement them. But obviously we are not the implementing agencies. The people who have to implement are the member states. So we have to work together with member states, but also try and mobilize some resources for the implementation of some of the programs.